Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Plus Three Futures and Commodities show. We are recording about an hour before the close on Friday, the 27th day of September. My name is Ben Maldonado. As always, I'm here with my partner, Barry Hederachi. Barry, can you believe September is almost over?
September is over, the quarter is over, and now the show starts.
Exactly. It's end of the month, end of the quarter. The big show's about to start. So,
Mhm.
what we're going to cover on today's are the important levels in all these major markets, because one of the things we are very confident of is we're going to see a lot of volatility in the fourth quarter. So, without any delay, let's jump right in. SPX cash index.
What's going on is I have a sleepy uptrend.
That's it. Well, sleepy but bullish. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
sleepy
it.
uptrend. Yep, sleepy bullish. All right. So if you guys are new, I would suggest you catch up, maybe watch the last couple of episodes. You guys can catch up to the storyline here. One thing I wanted to introduce, talk about today was, we have these squares sitting in different places. And well, I'll bring it up when I talk about the ES because
Okay.
they all have different meanings and give you different frame of reference. And here we're using the April low only because it gave us a perfect 90 by 90 going up into the high in July. So I'm going to stick with that till proven otherwise. Like this,
Hmm.
it's not that valid. But now, boy, is it perfectly in tune because once we broke to the upside, we talk about in when we're talking about squares, we talk about these key levels, at least a full square, 50% of the square. But it applies to pretty much any division. But we talk about how we look at a market breaking above one of these levels and holding above or breaking below and holding below, getting stuck
Hmm.
below.
Hmm.
And this is such a great example of market breaking above, the pullback holding, almost to the tick right at the 90-degree line, and then slowly starting to move higher. Of course, today's kind of an inside bar, which sets us up perfectly for next week. All
Right.
these Friday insides.
And Barry, that get above and then pull back perfectly also gives you confidence, more confidence that the placement of the square and the size of the square is right. The 90 is good.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Are you kidding? We're taking risks based on this.
Yeah,
So
but I mean that's the kind of confirmation that when you have, because as you were saying, you have multiple squares and different things, they mean different things. When you get a square that acts like that, you can say, okay, this is a base thing that I can use. I know this level is good and
mhm.
the square is good.
Absolutely. And so we're going to continue to use this. But I just wanted to show you, I put in the 8 lines here. If you can look at this line that we're touching for the last couple of days, right there. Can you see that? This
Yeah,
dotted
yep,
line?
yep.
Okay, so that's the first eighth into the next square. And technically, until we can really kind of take it out, there's no whole new trend starting, and this could be just as well be sort of an overshoot.
Yeah,
I just want to notice it only because we stalled there for 2 days, and I
sure.
think it's worth noting. And the other thing is this ABCD, if we were to get up and going, it's exactly 3/8 into the next square, and that's
Hmm.
actually pretty good place for a pretty good target.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So getting back to where we were. So 90 was the focus for a while with 56.73. Again, this is the cash chart. I'll get into the ES in a minute. Last week we left off talking about 56.73 and how, long as we're above that, we're in pretty good shape. And if we can get above and hold above 57.12, how the market's going to be in pretty good shape. Meaning
Hmm.
it's not selling off, looks a little weak in the legs, but hangs on there and keeps trekking, right? So we went up high, but we went up into yesterday, and today is sort of a little bit of a inside bar. And for next week, we have to obviously, if this ends up becoming, the market's not closed yet, but if this ends up being an inside bar at the close, we'll definitely have to watch the high and low of this. If the
Hmm.
low gets taken out, and we take out 57.12, we really want to watch this closely to see if any counter trends get stuck below that. And obviously, taking out 56.73 would be sort of a yellow flag, right? For the uptrend that
Mm-hmm.
maybe some kind of a bigger correction is starting. When I talk about a market using a square, it's really from the perspective of where that square is coming from, right? Like here, it's April 5th. And some of the other squares, I try not to move too much because that way it becomes well easier to read if you're just watching it once a week.
Mm-hmm.
And but when it comes to S&P indices, I jump around a little bit just to give different perspectives, but we kind of end up in the same sort of solution at the end of the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
We look at it, but it helps to look at it from different angles. So here we are above 90. We're doing good, but the little clue there is the inside bar. We didn't move higher. So if we take out the high Sunday night, Monday, well, this will be Monday. It's a cash. We can expect it to go just a little bit higher, maybe up into 57.90 is really like the next resistance for the cash, mainly because there's a gray line that's going across there that's based on some geometry.
Mm-hmm.
And it could give us some kind of a resistance where it would have to consolidate above 57.12. But those are like the possibilities. In general, longs are above 56.73, cash, we're in pretty good shape. And just to get a little measure, so
Look at that.
yeah, if we come from the September low back in 22, cash is up to 70 from that low, right where we got stuck. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
here, look, it's the same square, but we're looking from another angle, right? So that's something to watch. Is this something to trade off of? No, but it's just to know that there's a lot of things getting stacked, getting up into that high. So we want to
Mm-hmm.
watch how that's working out. April's looking good. The only other one I wanted to look at was look at, there's also a method to the madness. You don't put squares everywhere. You can obviously put it at the swing low and a reasonable low in between based on the pattern. And also the other place you want to put a low would be the low before the high or the low or the swing low before the current leg. So this would be the swing low before the current leg. Now, if you go back to the 90, I think what I wanted to show you guys was,
Get the 45.
yeah, the move is exactly 45 and we stalled for 2 days. So that's something, right? I feel like this 45, this is the, low before the high and we're making new highs. So this is the low before that high. Both of these lows count, but this is really the low, right? This is like the
Mm-hmm.
immediate low. This is the swing low. And so just to remember, if we turn down here, we do have some overhead, at least in terms of square. So we're up 45 degrees. It's 57.7. Let's see, where is that? 57.67. Okay. Now, why do we want to remember that? We want to remember it because if we get on top of that and we sort of settle, well, then we have a lot more upside
Mm-hmm.
and maybe get to 72, maybe get to 90. Either way, there's more upside. And if we don't, and normally when we run a 45, we get some kind of a correction. It's not the end of the world, but some kind of a correction. So I'm just showing you guys that if we get up in there, then a correction wouldn't be out of order. So just looking at this market without even jumping into anything else, if you look at the fact that we have an inside bar and now we know what's right on top of it, and we started getting weak, we start taking out today's low and possibly Thursday low, then we know that 45 move had an effect. We terminated there, and now we're going to correct for a little bit, do a counter trend, check these old highs, and maybe get started again. But at least for the next week, because the critical is part of the 45-degree move, not we don't do 45s every day. We ought to monitor that. Anything you want
Mm-hmm.
to add, Ben?
No, I think that's good.
Okay.
Good for cash.
Yeah. And the reason I brought that up was, going back to the April low. If you look at it, look what happened in April. We went up to the 45 line, right?
Mm-hmm.
We met,
Stalled.
stalled, and we had 1 to 3 days down.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started up again. Then we got on top of it right there. And then we made a mad dash right into the 90 by
Mm-hmm.
90.
Mm-hmm.
So my point is using the same logic, right? Here was a high and the swing low. This is a leg that's moving higher. So here's a high. This is a leg that's moving higher. A similar pattern, right? You see that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That V here.
Mm-hmm.
So
Hmm.
that was 45 and it stalled for a few days. So when I say, well, it could stall and we need to correct a bit normally when it happens. So here's a really good example of where it happened. So it could be something like that. Of course, it could be a little steeper, but it's worth noting because you can see how it stalled. Like we see it happening, and here it stalled. So we have a bit of a record, right?
For sure.
The stalls. All right, let's look at the Dow really quick. Did something unexpected, popped above 42 550 and made it, decided to make a little high, which
Hmm.
looks really suspicious. And I really want to watch to see how we do with this next week because we want to make sure we're above 42 550. And just the way you look at it, it just just bleeds if falls break, right? If we so
Right.
technically, if we take out today's low, if the Dow takes out today's low on Monday, then we really have to kind of be alert to a potential turn because again, like we had 216 degrees up and
Hmm.
we're stalled here. And you can see how hard it pushed and then one day down and then one up, right? So, and if it holds above, fine, great. We're going to consolidate and move. But you can see how there's a storyline here now. You can see how the Dow is at a critical line, cash is at a critical line, and
Hmm.
we're watching to see which way the path is going to show how the path's going to show up. So here's this 90-degree square that we've been using on the E-mini, and it worked out pretty well. We talked about how if it gets above 56.82, we could have a potential false break. And if we settle above 57.51, that we're probably going to trade higher because, especially if we can hold above, which we did, and we traded higher. And we'll have to stick with that. Now, what happens over time is, some of these old squares start to wear out or they'll shift the vibration. I mean, especially after a couple of years, a whole year of trading. So I'm really watching how much longer this can go on. It's something you definitely want to watch.
Hmm.
Now we looked at this on the cash chart, but I want to look at it here in the continuation chart. You can see how 90 is very close, not too far. And you can see looking at the price, how we're crunching into it, it just feels like there's some kind of overhead, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it's not freely moving like we were doing in here through here. So
No.
that level, that 90 from the August low is around 58.43, 44. So watch that. That's potential um,
Resistance.
resistance for sure. I
Hmm.
mean, there's no
Hmm.
question because it's the low, right?
Hmm.
And you can see from here we don't have any issues. We're well above,
Hmm.
but luckily that 57.51 happens to be exactly that 45, so we can watch it. We can watch it that way too. But anyway, I just wanted to point out there are a couple of things there, and it's really so what that means is if you're holding above the critical levels, no problem, no sweat, just continue to trade, keep calm, nothing to worry about.
Hmm.
But if we decide to turn down, now okay, we do have some evidence above, and there's enough reason to look at the short side, at least in the corrective sense, like we looked at. What was it here? That other 45-degree move, yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yep.
example, something like that. All right, let's jump to the weekly.
Those expanding triangles are rough.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So here
Well,
we're
the weekly's at a critical spot.
man. That's the thing, I wanted. That's why I want to get into all the little squares
Yeah.
because we made, we made, and this is, I moved it back to the sort of a significant low. I mean, I was going off of here,
Hmm.
which is fine. That's the leg, but sometimes it's good to look at it from other points, mainly because this chart, at least time wise, has been really, really good.
Yeah, very good.
I mean, look at here. We went up 90 weeks, right?
Down
Uh,
45,
Down 45,
up
up roughly
45.
45. Yep,
Yeah.
correction. And then we can see exactly on the 45 mark, it turned here,
Yep. Yep.
turned here on the 45 mark, turned here on the 90 mark. So it's got some traction. I wouldn't say it's like a waste of time.
Hmm.
And looking at that, well, what do we know? It's at another 45. This is based on, not any old low, but it's really the 2020 low, which is the important low. So again, we're here. So I started to see this like, wow, we're really seeing a lot of resistance up ahead, up above. And especially when we started stalling today, right? I started looking at the charts to see what else is there.
Mm-hmm.
And so wanted to look at, so that's a 45. Here we go.
So
That's,
is that level right around 5,800 on that weekly?
you mean right here, up here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 58, 50, it's 58.
I'm talking about from the 2020 low, the 45.
Okay, I'll look at it. But here right now we're looking at, 58.38, something like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And there was another really cool thing here, I thought. Hold on.
It's just a lag. Oh boy, that's good.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to talk about, which, and this is, really the legit swing low before we started moving higher.
Mm-hmm.
And well, we're up 144 degrees on the weekly. So I would say we're close to some kind of a high here where a correction could start. Now, the last time we talked about that was, when the markets came up into the 50%, right, from below, and we were up in here. And then we talked about it, obviously, here when we squared out. And then we were looking for something along this 56.72, which we got for, 1 week. And then we were looking for a lower high.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we started moving higher. And now we're at this 144 level. I think this is really important. So we should watch that. So I just wanted to bring that up. And
It's all right around 5,800, it looks like.
yeah, and you can see how it's there in all the different indices, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's just there. So I think it's important to watch it. So for next week, what are we walking away with? Is, we do have some overhead. And so we're watching when we have overhead, what we do is we want to watch the support levels to make sure, can we hold them and hold above these levels, or are we gonna, like slip below?
Absolutely.
So that's really the key. All right, so that's it for the weekly. We're back on the daily. Let's touch on the 30-minute really quick. Not that it was a big eventful week, exciting week on the
Grind.
charts, but hey,
Right.
it's a week on the books.
Mm-hmm.
The coolest thing was we held the lower trend line almost entirely the entire week, and the pressure was to the upside. We were waiting for the market to get to 58.14. We got there. You can see how couldn't hold above, got below. This is getting stuck below, and we were stuck below till all the way till this morning when we tried to get above again and couldn't, failed. And then we, traded lower down to the trend line, and we have some other support along the lows. And you can see how when a market gets stuck below, that pressure just goes away, right, Ben? And it just sits
Mm-hmm.
there, kind of floating, going with the wind. And the wind was definitely a downdraft, so we went lower.
Yeah.
And now, we're probably going to go back up and test. So for next week, look, the numbers we were talking about, they're all up in here. You said 5,800. We're right in here, right? Right above
Yep.
here.
Mm-hmm.
And but extending to 58.58. So I would watch this 58 to 58.86, 58.58. They're both really good levels. At least basis of 30-minute. So you want to watch those, see if we get there. Or if we, 58.14 looks like the level to watch next week. If we're gonna, the main thing I would say is to see if we can get above and hold above, or not hold above. If we can't hold above, and then we slip through 57.67 and we get stuck in this area, then I would say there's a high probability that kind of the correction we saw in that 45-day up moves, right?
Mm-hmm.
45-degree moves, we could be in for something like a correction like that. So we have overhead, and we're just watching to see how we settle, because our pivot sort of level is 180 off the low, just happens to be 58.14.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's a lot of talk about the S&P, but I hope it was not too much.
No, it's good. It's
All right,
because there's a lot going on where we are right now.
and there is a lot going on. All right, let's move on to bonds.
Perfectly sideways since August.
Yeah, in the big picture, for sure. And over here, we've been using the square 72. Sure enough, bonds couldn't hold above 125 and 124. Remember, 24.25 was our level. And last week we talked about how 24 is support, and it needs to hold above. Obviously, take another shot at it. Otherwise, if we take out 124 and the trend line, we were looking for a lot more weakness. So looks like bonds are also holding on till next week. Again, so for bonds is easy. 124 is the level to watch if we get stuck below that. And for the upside, just as easy, we want to get above the 72 and hold above it, which would be the 125 level. And the fact that if we can hold this cleanly and get above and hold that like a in a stable way, then I think we can go higher. But if we really can't take this high out and can't quite get above 125, then I think we might be also in for a correction.
Mm-hmm.
So, but watching the 124, 125 to see which way it's going to lead next week. Let's jump over to the weekly bonds. Weekly bonds at 128.07 was our target. Last week we got very close to it. Not we didn't tap it, but close enough. And this week we came up to the eighth line. Eighth is the dotted gray line, and we're holding above. So we have kind of a 1/8 of the square of 72 is sort of the range. And we'll see what happens. For now, we're watching the 24-25 level on the daily to see which way it'll get pushed. So for now, not much. Next, we have crude working out pretty well, like we were expecting. Once we got the low at the 64.75, which is the square of 60, we were looking for some kind of a rally towards 73.50, and if we can get above it, expect more. But we also pointed out to how much overhead we had, and that it was inevitable that we get some kind of a correction. Not to mention, if this is a good low, then we want to look at that first pullback, and that looks like the first pullback kind of stalled out today, right? Very narrow range today.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see what happens next week. We're looking for a couple of things. One is to see if we can hold this low, which would mean we have a higher low, and then the market would continue to go higher. So here we would set up for an ABCD as soon as we take out this swing high. We know we have support at the low, so upside is what we're looking for. So we can start taking bites out of it, long as we hold this the lows we had yesterday. So I'm using that as a reference, and taking out these highs would be sort of the acceleration point. Does that make sense, Ben?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're just seeing if we can get that higher low.
Exactly, and how that will come in. So here's the weekly chart. Pretty much the same story. We were making some cases for doing a nice flush here, false break to flush these out before we get going. And this could be that. We could clearly go down one more week and flush them out.
Yeah, because that's an outside reversal on a weekly too.
Yeah, here, right? Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So pullback, or, like I said, if we take out Thursday low, then we could be going for a new low here. And to mainly to flush all these out. It's very rare that commodities make a big move without taking out weak hands, and we've looked at all kinds of examples of this. So we're watching that next week to see what happens there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to gold, the one that was actually moving, right? Did some movement this week. So we had beautiful. This ABCD. Looks like we made the target good enough. And I saw, if you look at the weekly, you'll see, there is a square that's working here. And it's working here also.
Yeah, using it. Go use the July low and you'll get a 90 by 45.
July low. Mm-hmm. Okay, right here. Yeah.
Yep.
And and we have a nice square on the weekly also.
Yep.
So is that the 90 I'm talking about?
No, it's the let me tell you, it's on the daily 90 by 45 from the July low. That one, yeah.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's more than valid.
Mm-hmm.
More than valid, meaning that's actually a termination move.
Right.
And you know why I say that? Because do you remember this little triangle that we drew?
Yeah.
The idea is, obviously it wants to go to the end where the two touch, and that's should be where it terminates. But once in a while, it'll really blow out, up above it, and really sort of bring it to a climax, right? So we've done that. I think market wise, this is a good termination. So I guess we can look for some
kind of correction.
Some kind of correction. I was going to talk about the correction based on the weekly, but this is a good one. This is a good solid square. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. It's a good
Sure.
one. And we'll stick with this one for the next few days because we want to see if the correction holds about 50%. If it does, that would be a great,
Very bullish. Yep.
very bullish and very positive. It's good for the market. And if it holds at a quarter or a third, we'll watch that also
Hmm.
and see how it moves. But for now, I think the metals had the run and it probably needs to breathe a little bit. So
Yeah.
we ought to probably give it that room. On the weekly, what happened was, remember, we had this 2704 drawn out
That's
last
a
week
good
or the
one.
week,
Yeah.
a couple of weeks ago. And anyway, we got to the target. So boom, there it is.
Yep.
I mean, we made that half square so fast.
So fast.
Amazing how fast that ran up. And that's kind of what happens when we get these 90-week cycles and whatnot, and they get terminated. There's a bigger cycle that pulls it up.
Hmm.
So here, basis the weekly, long as we're below 2704, I'm expecting some kind of a correction here and coming down. And, as long as we hold about 2,500, we're in good shape. But anything above 2,570 is solid, solid gold.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that goes well with the daily square that you pointed out.
Sure.
Right? So we're good. Let's take a look at copper.
Yeah, before you jump on copper too, I'm not going to cover silver, but silver was 90 to 90 high to high on a daily basis too. So it looks
Wow.
like
Okay.
silver may have topped as well.
Okay. Okay.
I'm not saying it's going to crash. I'm just saying, you got to expect some sort of correction consolidation.
hmm Yeah. I mean, if you go for this high, I mean, this is 90 going into here, right? Right there,
Is 90 by 36? Yep.
90 high to high. So
Hmm.
anyway, looking at copper, our target was the 50% point. That's a dash line. And we managed to get above it. Now we'll see if we can hold above it. But boy, if we can hold above 453, copper's on a run. I mean, it's
Hmm.
on a run anyway. Holding above this would just tell us how bullish it is. But I think, copper being what it is, it's okay to pull back even down to 445. It's still in good shape. Ever since here's the first pullback, just like crude oil, right? Here's a low. Crude looks like that. We're coming into that first pullback. You see how he took
Hmm.
off. So we're looking for something like
Beautiful.
that.
Yep.
And here's a case where, we got copper pullback right onto the square and a nice run up. And now we want to let it correct because the target was really 50%, ran above a little bit, great, which means it's just stronger. And if we can hold above those two levels I talked about, copper will continue to be in a strong position. Here's the weekly. You can see how, once we broke out of that 144 level, we sat there a few weeks trying to pull it up, and then blasted, and there we go. So if we can hold above those levels I mentioned, copper could easily go to 480. And it almost seems like, with all this China news coming in the last couple of days, you can
Hmm.
kind of see the copper people actually kind of got onto it a little early,
Hmm. That's true.
right?
Yep.
2 weeks ago, matter of fact. So you can see how, and when that happened, there wasn't any big industrial news, right? Everything was
No.
kind of slow. But here we go. Now upside is 480, and copper looks good. I mean, if it corrects all the way back to 423, we're still in great shape. But I think copper made the lows, and we're making higher lows. So the push is to the upside. Copper looks good, just like all the metals. But with gold squaring out, it's possible that copper also kind of pulls back a little bit. There are squares and things in there. We just don't have time to go through every square for every market.
Hmm.
So I have to sort of hurry through these. All right, dollar doing pretty good. We talked about it. I was a little suspicious around this 100.5 because we just couldn't get going, right? We would just continue to make lower lows.
Hmm.
And then we talked about, saying how if we get to 99.50, it'll really, we really want to see a false break here without trying to get too complicated about things. And there's good support in history around that. Plus, if we can get to 60 or very near it, that would square that out, 120 by 60, 60 by 120, I mean. And
Hmm.
I mean, then we could have a solid termination. So it looks like we're going there. We made a lower low this week. So what do we got? We've got lower lows and lower highs, lower lows and lower highs coming in. And so it looks like the dollar is going to go a little bit lower. So we're sticking with the technicals and let it finish up whatever business. And let's move on to the weekly. Pretty much the same story. We were holding above the 90, and the idea was that we do a false break, off at the low here at the 90, or better yet, false break at the low that we had in July of 23.
Hmm.
So we'll see if that happens. Looks like it's going to, because normally, if the square is good and support's holding, we don't really mess around. You can see, here, even here at the 50% level, market just takes off, right?
Hmm.
So the fact that we're slipping through, yeah, maybe a little bit of weakness here. All right. So that's the weekly dollar. Let's get back to the euro and climbing, things that I
Hmm.
didn't imagine
Yeah.
happening. We were on a 60-degree square. We had the 180 come up in July of 23,
Hmm.
and now we're moving higher. So it looks like that's the low that we're going to go up and challenge. So 1150 was the level of resistance, and we held the 50 here. So we're starting to move higher, and it looks like we're going to go up and tap that and finish the 180 and finish that leg.
Yeah, it wants to go up there. It looks like
Yeah,
it.
yeah, exactly. And from this low back in June, that'll be a full 60 degrees up, and
Hmm.
that might coincide with the dollar making that low. So everything lines up.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's take a look at the euro weekly. Well, we had this 109.50 level. Well, before that, we had the 108. Remember, we were messing around this for a whole year, more than a year.
Yeah.
And we talked about how this triangle, when it breaks, it's probably going to continue. But the main thing was us breaking above, holding above. All these times we were waiting for you to, make a commitment to one side. So here it happened. We talked about it in real time, and we broke through the line, went up into this 109.50 area, got on top. So we're looking at the upside from the low in 22, 90s at 13.16, let's say. So I guess we're going to go up there and make do a false break above this and make the square, and then that should finish up this leg. Well, that would be a full square from the low in 22, and from here it'll be half a square move,
Hmm.
45-degree move. So it looks like it's kind of baked in. We'll watch it to see what happens. Anything you want to add?
No, it looks right. Looks like we got some unfinished business up there at the 90 that it wants to do.
Yeah, yeah, sure does. And let's take a look at the Hang Seng.
Look at that.
Look at that, eh?
Hmm.
And this is what we talk about. When we talk about holding above levels, and if you guys have been watching, we cover this. I cover this every week. Ever since we held above here, we were looking for you to move higher. We were looking for evidence, and the 17,110 held. Next level was 1854. We said above 18. I think I said exactly what I said was above 1854. We're going to pick up momentum,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
we sure did.
Yeah, we did.
Right to 19,450 was the resistance, and we were talking, potential false break, whatnot. No chance, man. Wednesday we ran up there, just one day sort of a hesitancy, and took off. And now looks like we're going to do that big ABCD that we were taught. We put in a couple of
Sure.
weeks ago, and the 50% of the square. So we have more upside, and 21,738 is the next 50% level. ABCD would get us to 21,358. So that's the story. And now that we broke up so hard, it just looks like this.
Plenty of room to sit back on top of
Yeah,
it.
yeah, exactly. We have room to correct as much as it wants. Anyway, we know the lows were in. We called out this low, we called out these and here, and it looks good. It looks good.
Yeah,
You
this
gonna
is the
cut? Yeah, go
perfect
ahead.
example of why you buy that first pullback.
Yeah, and there's several markets we talked about already today where we're waiting for this to finish
Yep.
because the potential is that, and,
Yep.
that's what we want to look at.
Mhm.
It's always there. It's just a matter of being able to get it off a reliable corner, coming off of one. You doing
Yeah, I'll talk about gas.
yes, okay. But anyway, doing great, right? We've been bullish on this and all through here last couple of months we've been making higher lows and higher highs and eventually start to take off. So the quarter level is 299 is really my level. Why?
Hmm.
Because that's the middle of this whole business here. And it seems like to break above, we probably need some kind of a big strong move, like a news related move or something, just to get above. And we'll see what happens. Anyway, you're going to cover it, so I think we're good.
Yeah,
That's it for me. Let me
very
put it back
good.
to you. Yep. Thanks. All right. No new highs for the Nasdaq. Hey.
Yeah, I mean, that's the fly in the ointment, right? The market that was leading the bull market is lagging, since we made that low in
Mm.
July.
I mean, even the Dow made
Uh,
a new high. So
yeah, and this
sure.
we're not while we're close, we're not there. What I did draw in was I drew in this ABCD,
Mm-hmm.
which would give us, a perfect sort of false break new high.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
also I also was looking at a little timing.
Mm-hmm.
45 from the August low gets us to October 7th.
Mm.
60 from the high gets us to October 3rd. So there's
And
some
there's a lot of
stuff.
stuff that comes together between third and the seventh.
Yeah. So that's that for this first week of October could be an interesting spot. Maybe we get the push, to get up here and complete this ABCD, do a false break, and then we see what happens. Obviously, if we can sit on top, if we get up to this full square and can sit up on top of it, that's around 20,840, it
Mm-hmm.
would be bullish. So let's see. It's the lagging and the former leader lagging always gives me a little pause as to what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's jump on to weekly. So the weekly, we know about the 90 that we got at that high. The high obviously hasn't been taken out, but we do have another up bar this week.
Mm-hmm.
So since this pullback, that gives us two up bars because this was an inside. So, if it's going to be bullish, we should get another up bar next week. If it turns a tail and, turns down, maybe the correction is starting and some ABCD or a bigger downturn could be starting.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to watch this coming week, see if we can make a higher high this week. And here's the monthly. I changed this up and was looking at something that I thought was a little better fit.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing a square of 52 here, and look at what we got at the high.
Looks fine. Yep.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
3 squares up, 5 squares over. Fits with all these counts that came in at the high.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very curious to see if we're going to, get stuck under here. Are we going to make a new high? Is it going to be a false break high? Can we sit on top of it? I mean, those are all the questions that are still outstanding. But what is no doubt is there was, from this O2 low, there's good timing and price and time right there at the high.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add on the NQs?
Well, I mean, I just can't imagine this. It just doesn't look like it's ready to go. But if it does, I mean, ready to make new highs. But if it
Mhm.
does, just looking at the pattern, then we'll have a hell of a lot more to go. It just looks like that, you know,
Yeah.
because we were up square and a half from the low in 22. And from the lows we made in 2020, we ran up square and a half before turning back, correcting for
Hmm.
entire square. So
Mm.
it'll keep things in balance if we do, if we make an actual correction.
Like a full square type correction
Yeah,
back to
full
here.
square. Yeah, yeah. It just seems like it needs to balance it out. Otherwise, it looks a little too bubblish.
Right.
Right?
So we'll see. We know the levels and we know what to watch. Um, let's look at our old friend Bitcoin. The key thing with Bitcoin this week is look at what we did. We
Yeah, held
held
above the
above
square,
that full
man.
square.
Solid.
And
Yeah.
that's solid, right? Those are full bars over it. And then later this, Thursday, Friday, we're getting the push higher. I drew in an ABCD, which takes us up, just slightly above the half square,
Hmm.
which is we know that's a decent target because since we held this, the magnet and the pull is up to the half square here. So
Yeah, we can get up in there. Yep.
67,850, kind of the next target.
Yeah,
And then we
yeah.
see, do we have the strength to push through, get on top of this? Then that opens up, sort of all-time highs and the
I
full
tell you what,
square.
though, if we get in there and not make a new high, that's kind of bearish.
Yeah. Yep. It would be.
So,
The other thing I wanted to show you was the monthly, since we only have one more day, Monday, and we print the monthly. So far, it's inside. Be nice if we could get up and, push up and make an up bar here. And then this big tail we had last month, is probably a much better low if we do reverse here.
mhm.
But we'll see. We'll see how it looks. Overall, I think it looks bullish. We have to watch those levels on the daily, which is the full square here, around 62,000. As long as we hold above that, we're good. And then the next area of interest is going to be 67,850. So that's that. Let's talk about the commodities. We're going to cover grains, sugar, and natural gas. The one thing I wanted to say before we got into them, so far with basically one full trading day left in the month, every single commodity that I follow, except for crude, has a monthly up bar.
Wow.
Wheat, corn, soybean, sugar, cotton, cocoa, coffee, gold, silver, copper, nat gas, all have up bars for this month.
Mm.
So something is flipped. And remember, a lot of these were in downtrends, trying to make lows, pushing lower. It's not like they were in raging bull markets like, gold and silver were, but most of them were trying to bottom, but we got all those monthly up bars. So it's something to consider. It's something to think about. And this whole, China stimulus and every central bank cutting rates seems to be the catalyst for this shift that's happening in commodities now, this bullish shift. Let's take a look at the ones we're going to highlight this week. First, we start with wheat. Now, normally I wouldn't highlight a market that's just going sideways, which is what we've done basically for the last 2 weeks, and you'll see that
Yeah,
on
but
the
it's going
on the
higher,
weekly.
higher
It's
lows. It's
it's moving, right?
Mhm.
It's slowly building the pattern, right? We had a low, high, higher low, higher high, higher low, and now the interesting thing to watch is the last 3 days we're staying on top of the full square. And that's the kind of action you want to see to get this push to get the next high. And also what, like Barry showed you in the Hang Seng, and I think I showed you last week in sugar, and you'll see it, right? This is your first pullback. These are the pullbacks, and any one of these could result in one of these big moves. And that's what we're looking and trying to catch, with the proper technicals and the odds. When you sit on top of a square, that's what you're trying to catch. Because we know if we hold on top of the square, and that's around 578, odds favor, then we're heading to 652, which is the half square. So that's the wheat daily. Let's take a quick look at the weekly, and you'll see the visual representation of sideways. Inside bar, 2 weeks inside. Notice we're not pulling back after this nice move. It's only inside. So next week, if we can take out the highs of these bars, it bodes very well for continuing movement up to the full square here, which on here is right around 680 on the weekly. Let's take a look at the monthly. We're talking about up bars. There's your up bar.
Mhm.
Nice little three drives here, little
Yep,
false
yep.
break at the low, and then the
Hmm.
turn.
I think it's set up nicely,
It
beautifully.
is.
So,
We just set up well. All right, let's go to the next one. Let's take a look at corn. Again, similar pattern to wheat, although more of an upswing than wheat. And this trend line, by the way, that looks like it goes off into the universe, that's from the Russian invasion highs. That's from a swing high. So we are
About to break
in the
it.
process of breaking that and eclipsing it. So the daily looks good. The low is good. We've gotten the push up. We're still getting higher highs and higher lows. We stay with corn. Let's look at the weekly. Now the weekly is poking its head, and we got a weekly close above 412 in this full square. If you look left, you can see how important that is. Look at all that resistance that has been there time after time again. So sitting on top of this 412 area on a weekly basis is going to be very, very important for corn. So we're going to watch that closely and make sure, we get a full bar above it, full weekly bar above it, sit on top, and then that opens up the half square at around 517.
All right.
Let's check the monthly. There's another monthly up bar.
Mm-hmm. Not boring. Up bars are
No,
not boring.
no. And on a monthly basis, it's big, right? It potentially signals a major turn. And that's what we're trying to catch here. Anything you want to add on corn?
No, we're good. Good cover. Good
Okay.
coverage. This
The
is
surprising one
what
this
everyone needs
week,
to know.
yeah. Surprising one this week has been beans. It's been the strongest, and it was the laggard.
Mm-hmm.
But notice the pattern, right? We triangulated the low, little false break here at the low on the half square. We pushed up to the full square, couldn't make it. And then we basically just went sideways.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of familiar what wheat's doing, going sideways for a while. They're
Yep.
sideways for a couple of weeks. And then this week it woke up. And look at what we got. One, two, three, four bars sitting right on top of the full square.
That
And then
breaking
today,
above, holding above thing.
that is breaking above, holding above. And here we get the launch today. So soybeans looks really good. The target short term is this half square around 1125. But that's the kind of action you want to see. You want to see a first push up, pull back with a higher low. Here, not much of a pullback, right? It was basically an eighth of the square pullback, and then boom, pushed up. That's a nice weekly bar, right? Again, like wheat, two inside bars, and then bam.
Yeah. Yep.
Hopefully, that's a preview of what wheat's going to do for anybody and
Mm-hmm.
everybody that's long wheat. But here we're getting a close above the half square, and the half square here is around 1,060. So we want to see a continued push up so that we have some room to pull back and give us that get above, stay above, structure.
Mm-hmm.
But the weekly looks good. Let's take a quick look at the monthly. There's your monthly. Looks like it was sure looks like a false break here on the low, right? Couldn't This is a perfect example of getting below, not able to stay below, right?
Exactly.
And then look at the full month here. We have a full month above
Mm-hmm.
in addition to an up
And he
bar.
checked back on that support on the floor nicely. We're back in 17, 18, 19, all that action
Hmm.
back there before 2020.
Yeah.
Nice
Yep.
check back. So
So this one looks good as well. And like I said, it had been the laggard and it's surprisingly leading now.
mm.
Anything to add here on beans?
No, I think grains are all, you're right on the money. We're, good timing, perfect timing, catching it right at the start. So let's follow through.
Yep.
Time to trade the grains.
There could be a lot of good trading on the way up on this as they go because we are very early. All right, let's go to sugar. And why am I showing you sugar? Because remember, sugar was one we tracked into the low. We got that first push up. We got this ABCD down, and we said, hey, you buy it here on a reversal because there's a chance you could get a big move. Well, there's your big move. The reason I'm highlighting it is from here to here, we got 90 by 45.
Yeah.
Actually, it's this low. It's the third higher low. It's this one. So there's 90 by 45.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean? And if you look at today's bar, it basically shows you we're failing at this half square. Doesn't mean the bull market run is over. It means, okay, this leg is over. We're going to get some sort of correction. It can pull all the way back to this full square and still be super bullish.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as we're below this half square, we got to think more of consolidation correction here. And
Yeah.
that's okay. It's okay. We've had a nice run. You
Lows
just
are in
don't want
place.
the lows are in place. You just don't want to chase it up here. You want to let this correction or consolidation, however it goes, play out. And then based on that, we can decide what the next move is. Let's take a look at the weekly. Weekly's beautiful, right? I mean, there's that massive the
Yeah.
bar that we got last week, and then we have a full bar above the square
Yep.
on this week. So we
And
want to
broke the trend
see,
line.
yeah, we broke this down trend line, right? If we can hold this, that's obviously going to be super bullish. If we have to pull back a little bit, I mean, structurally, we could pull back here, like a quarter of the square here and still be very bullish, even all the way back to this half square and still be bullish. But we do have to expect some sort of consolidation, because of the square that showed up on the daily.
Right.
And it could be inside bars, it could be sideways stuff. We don't
Uh,
know. Let's see how it plays out. Let's take a look at the monthly. Similar look on the monthly. We had this little false break low on the half square, big reversal bar on the monthly. Hopefully we get a close above this full square. Because if we can hold this full square, which is, call it 2230, it's going to, on a monthly basis, open up, up around 2680, 27 area on this half square.
mhm.
So it's very bullish. It's sort of breathing in and breathing out now. Let's sort of see what this consolidation or correction looks like. Anything else you want to add here on sugar?
No, nothing to add other than that looks like, we have the breakout. So now it's definitely settled to the upside, in the big picture.
In the big picture,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yep. The downtrend that you've been seeing is done.
Mhm.
And now we see, what kind of correction or consolidation we're getting after this first nice push up. I mean, if you're looking at it, Barry, it's probably going to be some sort of sloppy four, right? Because this two was
Exactly.
so clean. So
Yep.
maybe it's just going to chop around here for a while and burn off time.
And
But we'll
taking all
see.
the latecomers.
Frustrating everybody that comes in
Mhm.
late because it doesn't move. It goes up and down and goes nowhere. And that's
Exactly.
that's a possibility. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right. Lastly, the last one we'll look at
Mhm.
is our old friend, Nat Gas.
Yay.
Yeah. And what we pointed out last week was this, right? This bar here, right? We got above, stayed above,
Pull
as Barry
back.
was
Yep.
showing you.
Hmm.
There's your pullback, and then boom, got the move right up to the full square. This thing likes to make moves, pretty quickly, square to square, top to bottom. Sometimes it doesn't even barely pauses at the half square and just keeps going. So what I liked about today was, we had a potential to fail here and sort of head down. The jury's still out because all the bars, the last 3, 4 bars, we've been crossing this full square. But as long as, next week we start getting some bars that stay above this 282 level, the half square here is open, which is
Hmm.
342. Really like to see it hold here, take out this high, and then come up here because then that really solidifies that this was a good low. We had the first push, and this could be the monster wave potentially. We'll see. We'll see how it plays.
Yep.
Interesting position where we stopped on the weekly, huh?
Oh boy. Perfect.
We know how these triangles go when they break. I mean, they're big moves. So really watching the highs here. The key level on a weekly basis we want to stay above is a 270. We stay above 270, do a couple little bars in here inside and press up against that. The move out of these triangles can be really, really
I
powerful.
mean, what we failed to talk about is, you were talking about it at the low. How
Yeah.
it's I mean, actually I remember talking about it when you were at the low, early 24, how that was really the deal. That's the place to get long. Then we had the pullback. I remember talking about how this is setting up to go higher, and here we go. Now we're higher.
And we're higher and potentially breaking like almost 2 year triangle, right? Year and a half triangle,
That's going to be big
which
when it
on a
does that.
weekly, yeah, it'd be big. And you can see it. We'll show it on the monthly as well. I mean, there it is. We're at the top of that
Yeah.
triangle. And monthly basis, it gives us potential, room. If we break out and run to the half square, 490, 488.
Hmm.
So it's it's cocked and loaded. It's just a matter of if we're going to do it. If you look at the triangle, let's put it on the weekly basis. If you look at the triangle, if we don't do it here, we could come back and test again and wind up a little
Hmm.
more.
Yeah.
Possible. But let's see.
Hmm.
Let's see. Anything else to add in gas?
No, it's perfect. We're good.
Okay, the topic I wanted to talk about today, Barry, that's it for the
Hmm.
commodities, by the way. I
Yeah,
just
good
think
cover. Good coverage.
even though, thank you, even though it's not like a technical point, the fact that almost every single commodity had a monthly up bar is something to put in your mind and say, okay, did something change? Did something shift?
Exactly.
And
Hmm.
I think that sort of segues into a good topic, Barry, that I want to hear your thoughts on
Hmm.
forecasting versus trading.
Ah,
Um,
good
we
one.
yeah, we see, a lot of FinTwit, most of FinTwit is about forecasting, right? Because I made the call, and then you pat yourself on the back if you made the right call, or delete your tweet if you made the wrong call. It's kind of like
Right.
it's a bi-directional risk there. It's only one
Hmm.
way.
Hmm.
But anyway, the topic of forecasting versus trading, I think it's super important to understand the difference and really talk a little bit about it for the traders out there to think about. So, what are your thoughts
Yeah,
on that?
well, I mean, it's a good topic. And it's funny that, the name that we use is plus three forecasting.
Right.
Is not plus three trading. We have to probably change it. But forecasting has that kind of a lure, right? It's kind of a very attractive, it's a sexy like topic. And it's cool to be able to know the future. There's so much connected to being able to be certain, to have that certainty about the future. For most things in life, that actually helps, like having some reasonable idea about what's going to happen in the future,
Right.
and thus the futures market, and everything is based on the path forward. So, and I think because of that, traders also get into the same idea of how, we have to know what's going to happen in order to take a trade. The thing is, when it comes to trading, is really it ends up becoming it's probability, right? And you need some kind of a methodology to trade, because how you can't trade a forecast.
No.
You can forecast all kinds of things, but how are you going to actually risk your money with the forecast? So what you really need is to separate yourself, forecasting self from the trading self. And the best is probably not to even mix it up. A lot of the people I know that have been trading for a long time, they really don't care about forecasting so much. They're more interested in, how am I going to handle the next trade?
Hmm.
And so I think it's about splitting the work, and and I think the forecasting kind of work is great. You need to do some of that so you can have some kind of a frame. But the thing is, boy, you can't get married to that. And especially these days, you put that stuff out on Twitter and whatever platform. Now you have an ego attached to that. Now you have to be right about that, and all kinds of things. And then you have to trade it. And we just get to get ourselves tighter and tighter into this bind where nobody's forcing you to go. It's just us trying to forecast, trying to do this thing that works in the real world, outside of trading, and trying to incorporate that into trading. It just doesn't work that well unless your forecasting methodology is linked up to your trading methodology, and they work together as one system. And we kind of do that. But I tell you, for the most people, the missing part is really having a system that they can trust. When I say system, is some set of rules that trigger them to take a trade, long side or short side. What do you think about that? Don't you think that's like the core of the whole thing?
Absolutely. And I, for one, can say that I made the mistake early on is when I discovered these cycles and did this cycle work. It
Mm-hmm.
became about forecasting as opposed to, okay, the cycles are a one data point. You have to look at what's the market doing, what's the technical structure, where are you in a square, where are you in the move, and all that had to be factored in before you could get a conclusion of that. Oh, this cycle is hitting and it's big and it's going to make the move.
Mm-hmm.
You can't blind yourself to all those other data points.
Yeah, and the forecasting is funny, trading and forecasting, and especially with Gann stuff, all this romance about being able to call the high, call the low, being able to call the entire year before it happens, right?
Hmm.
And all that is great. I think some people should do that. I think do the research, and if you can find those points and the times when the forecast is really forecast has traction, great, great, do all of that. But I think if you try to mix trading with forecasting, it's just really kind of asking for trouble unless you have sort of a superhuman mind, able to put your forecasting work in a separate compartment and trading in a separate compartment, right? And be
Yeah.
able to treat it like that. Otherwise, I think the mind is just gets slips right into it. You take ownership for your forecasting, and then the trading gets muddled in there. It just gets messy. So I think the way out is really not even worry about forecasting so much, but just focus on developing some kind of a methodology that you can trust. So there is a way to take advantage of a trend or not trend. You can be writing options and doing spreads and whatever it is. You have to be able to not forecast, have a system that's able to capture whatever the potential that you're trying to get. And
And the system has to give you some sort of edge where the odds are in your favor.
absolutely. So the better the odds, the better off you are.
Hmm.
At least you need that. Without that, the problem is a lot of people don't have that, or they'll piece together this, that, and the other thing, have three or four systems, you know, trying to do three or four systems, or even multiple systems, bind it into one just to get high probability, and then mix that in with some kind of, oh, I think the market's going to do this, that, and the other thing, and then get into all kinds of trouble. But the funny thing is, if you look over time, like I've, been watching the markets and trading the markets forever, and it's funny how every generation does the same thing. Every generation that comes in, they want to do this. It's a mental thing. It's a mental conditioning that get us into this mode of having to know, being able to forecast or predict what's going to happen, and you think that's how it's going to make money. But
Right.
then you see these other guys that don't care about forecasting at all. They just have a really good system. They stick by the rules and they execute every time the system triggers, and they're making money, no problem.
Absolutely.
So I think that's really the difference, is that having a system you trust and keeping it away as far as you can from the forecasting business that you're doing. Yeah. And
Right.
right. And sometimes you can get lucky and be able to find balance where your forecasting is tied into your trading. And for us, like you guys know, if you've been watching, I've been bullish the dollar and bullish crude, and we were a couple of years ago, we've been really bullish on all the commodities, right? But as
Hmm.
soon as the technicals were showing us, hey, this is not happening, that's not happening, we switched around. It's like, okay, we have to go the other way. So being flexible is the whole thing. So you can have certain ideas, like me being very bullish the dollar was me. That's my personal take. It wasn't necessarily what the charts are doing, right?
Right.
In the long run, I mean, I'm talking like 3 years window. So, but in the meantime, if a dollar is taking a break, it's having a pullback, and technicals have to tell you that, and then you say, okay, it's something else is happening. Let's wait for it to, you know, finish up the new process, like a lot of the markets are doing. And the bonds, remember how bearish I was in bonds, but then we
Yeah.
saw the square, and then it's like, oh, nope, we squared out. We have to be careful here. We got the higher low. All right, looks like bonds are going to go higher. So you have to, you can have some ideas in your head, but your technical work has to rule the path, right? Rule
It
the
has to take precedent, no question.
exactly. I
It'll
think that's
it'll
the thing. I think, yeah,
it'll keep you from blowing up. Let's put it that way.
not just blowing up, it'll keep you profitable
Yes.
because you're not entering any kind of any uncertainty about the future into it. If you're doing a system, you only care about the next signal. That's the beauty about systems, is you only care about the next setup, and you trade that accordingly and you manage that accordingly. After that one, you wait for the next setup. So it's not about I have to know. It's about, okay, here's an opportunity. How am I going to manage that?
Right.
So
Are
it's
my parameters met? And if they are, then I just manage the trade.
exactly. And you can see how that's such a different mindset. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, listen, Barry, I thought it was a good topic to discuss. I appreciate your insight. I'm sure everybody does. But listen, you guys have been great this year. Please continue to, spread the news about the channel, subscribe, like, hit the alerts. It's been great, and we really appreciate the support this year. Great job on the S&P coverage, Barry. I think everybody has a really, really great idea of what the important levels are, and that's what we're trying to do on the show, is give you the areas where important price action needs to be noted. So
Right.
take care, everybody. Q4 starts on Tuesday, so rest up and be ready. It's going to be wild, and we'll be ready with the levels and the squares.
Yep, we'll be ready. All right. Good job, Ben. We'll talk
Thanks.
to you soon.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.